G'day everybody, I'd like to introduce myself to the meeting. I'm Dan Compton. I operate Wings Out West based near Dubbo. I'm a professional pilot. I've got 35 years experience in the field, most of which as a commercial pilot. I did 12 years in the Royal Australian Air Force and 5 further years as a reservist. I've done 3 years in the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and I've got 3,000 hours tailwheel flying aside from all of that, and 2,500 of those hours are instructing people how to fly tailwheel aircraft. Mudgee's an ideal spot to do some of this training. I like to do navs over there, and that it's just a scenic spot, and I've got some fields over there, other fields over there I use in friends' farms and stuff. The airport itself has always been a very inviting place to go in the past, and the strips have always been really highly maintained. When I say the strips, I mean not just the asphalt surface, but the grass flight strip inside the gable markers. The Part 139 Manual of Standards that the airport operators use to govern how they maintain the strip, the grass areas inside the gable markers at Mudgee have always fallen well inside the limitations set down to use that area as a landing area, as beyond just being a runoff area for emergencies. The current ARO recently no-tammed these areas, the grass areas in the flight strip, as not to be landed on, and I feel this was a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to his lack of knowledge of how people operate on airfields, mainly being us people who operate tailwheel aircraft, but also helicopter operators use the grass flight strip as well, particularly if they've got skids and they are practicing skid-on landings where they're practicing an engine failure and they actually slide onto the ground. It's much better practice on the grass, naturally, than hitting the tarmac with your skids and sliding along that. A proper risk assessment doesn't appear to have happened, because the way it seemed to unfold was that the ARO saw us landing on the grass. It was unusual. He didn't understand why we were landing on the grass, so his reaction was to tell us not to land on the grass. When it happened to me personally, he was very confrontational about it, and instead of asking why I did it, I was just told not to do it. And then when I asked him why not to do it and demonstrated, I hope, what I was trying to do was demonstrate my knowledge of why I was doing it and how that was fitting in with the rules, being what was in the lack of anything in the en route supplement saying I couldn't do it, the lack of a NOTAM saying I couldn't do it, my understanding of the Manual of Standards and the requirements listed down for being able to use the grass, and also the pilot requirements in CAOs for being able to determine a safe landing area, are all things that I took into account when I land on a grass flight strip inside the gable markers. Where the ARO just saw me landing on the grass and thought that's wrong, it's not the tar, therefore I could have an accident and somehow he ended up viewing my autopsy, which was the emotional state that it got him into. I get that. He had a lack of knowledge, and it might have frightened him to see this happen. But from there, when I found that he wasn't the kind of person to listen to the reason and the rules and everything, it just turned into a pure argument, which was then resolved by him publishing a NOTAM saying we couldn't land on the grass. Now, once the NOTAM, a notice to airmen, is raised, then unfortunately that puts us in the situation where we can't land on the grass without going against that NOTAM, and if something then goes wrong, then we could be held accountable for having been warned not to land there, and then just by chance something else goes wrong and now we've done the wrong thing. Without a risk assessment, it doesn't take, his decision to close that grass doesn't take into account the whole reason we're doing it is to improve our safety and the safety of our aircraft. Landing on the grass in a tailwheel aircraft is much safer and much less chance of losing control of the aircraft than if you land on the tar surfaces. That is why we do it. Some tailwheel or some tail dragger aircraft with skid tails have to land on the grass. And like I said before, helicopters with skids are much better off landing on the grass than skidding on the tar. The whole point of the exercise is we're not playing funny buggers. We're landing on the grass for a reason. We're landing on the grass for our safety and the safety of our aircraft. To have that option shut off from us and to force us to land on the tar, quite frankly, for me, has meant that I won't come to Mudgee and conduct any further training. And I have several people from Mudgee who come here and do training with me, who would be much more, with the growing list of people from Mudgee who want me to train them, it would be very advantageous to be able to base myself over at Mudgee for a few days at a time and just train the people there. But in the current circumstances, there's no way I would do that because I'm not going to operate my aircraft constantly on the tar, especially during training where the loss of control is much higher, and I'd prefer that to happen on the grass where there's a bit of slip and slide, and we won't break the aircraft on the grass where we will break the aircraft on the tar. There's a similar incident happened in Dubbo. A new staff member was put on. The new staff member saw people landing on the grass, helicopters and tailwheel aircraft. He quickly issued an ATAM telling people not to land on the grass. He subsequently doesn't work at Dubbo Airport anymore, and the Dubbo Airport operations manager has reversed that decision, and but just to be on the safe side, and I agree with their decision, they've said that anyone who wants to operate on the grass needs to notify them so as they're aware that we'll be operating on the grass. And for me, that's just a standing thing. They know that that's what I do, so we're in agreement with that. And that allows the safe operation on the grass and the pilot to make that decision to determine a safe landing area. In America, a similar thing has happened, and nationwide, not just isolated incidences, but nationwide over time, as new airport staff started at airports who didn't understand why these aircraft were landing next to the tar area instead of on the tar area, they would go out and tell people not to land on the grass, and eventually over time the accident rate rose, and now the FAA, the American authorities for aviation, have put in writing nationwide telling airport operators to open up the grass areas for tailwheel operations. So that's a federal decision from the Federal Aviation Authority telling airport operators that they need to use what used to be common sense and open up those grass operating areas to pilots who need to use that and who have the ability to use that for their safety and the safety of their aircraft. So Australia is always a little bit behind what America does, and at the moment we're just going through the phase of getting some new airport staff who are making these knee-jerk reactions and closing the grass off, and it's only a matter of time before the insurance claims will start rolling in. And I think the councils who are making these decisions without doing risk assessments should be the ones who should be footing that bill, because they're making the operation less safe at the airport. But regardless of that, over time the pressure will come from the insurance companies and the airport users, and no doubt over time our Civil Aviation Authority or that will have to direct airport operators to reverse that decision. The thing is, if they just stick with the modus operandi at the moment, the normal operations, and let people keep using the grass and keep maintaining the airports to the high standard they've been maintained, it won't be a problem. So as for the ARO, I'm not saying the ARO should be punished in any way for this or anything. I'm not directly, I don't want to direct my attack at the ARO for this. I think what he's done, it seems to be a fairly standard thing for a new ARO with a lack of knowledge on airport operations and how airport users use the airport. And I just think it's just an educational thing that needs to be included in an ARO's training if they get any training. And that the only other, if I was to say anything where the council might give some advice to AROs at airports. That is not to be so confrontational, and to perhaps seek understanding of things. Listen to experienced operators and see what their knowledge is, and if the ARO themselves is perhaps a little bit deficient in their knowledge, maybe they need to do a little bit of research and hear a bit of advice off the experts before making uneducated decisions that impact people's safety and their normal operations. Yeah, that's all I'd like to offer, and I hope we can move ahead with this and go in a safer direction in the future. Bye.